This is NBC Nightly News, Wednesday, April 5th. Reported by John Chancellor.
Good evening. On a day when the war in Vietnam still dominates the news, we'll have film from there and a report from Washington on the president's reaction. The Berrigan conspiracy trial is over, and we'll have a final report from Harrisburg. Politics in the news tonight. We'll have the final tallies in the Wisconsin primary election, where some of us were yesterday. We'll hear what some of the candidates had to say about it. We'll take a look at the next big primary in Pennsylvania, and we'll hear from a new Democratic entry, Terry Sanford. We have some film of Charlie Chaplin as well tonight, but the war story comes first. South Vietnamese President Nguyen Van Thu went on radio and television tonight and told his people that this is the final battle which will decide whether our country will survive. In his words, Thu called on his army to defend South Vietnam and the United States to give the country maximum fire support. He said that the enemy drive south from the demilitarized zone is intended to force the Nixon administration in a presidential election year to withdraw its support from South Vietnam. Shortly after Thu spoke, the enemy began a new attack north of Saigon, near the town of An Loc, in an area long dominated by the enemy. In the Central Highlands, the enemy intensified harassing tactics. Some military sources think the next big North Vietnamese drive may begin in these highlands. And in the north, the campaign, which began a week ago, the major campaign in Vietnam these days, went on. There were conflicting reports that 2 North Vietnamese MiGs had flown into South Vietnam. The North Vietnamese briefly cut Highway number 1 between Hue and Quang Tri City, but were driven off. Quang Tri City is all but surrounded. The town of Dong Ha is still in North-South Vietnamese hands. NBC News correspondent Jim Laurie has been there, and here's his report.
This is where the South Vietnamese have chosen to stand and fight after retreating for nearly 15 miles from the DMZ. They call it the Dong Ha line. The Marines have stretched their tanks and artillery along this line on the south side of the Dong Ha River. This is the gateway to Quang Tri City, the provincial capital 6 miles south on Route 1. The South Vietnamese must hold this line and think they can. There are reports some North Vietnamese units have sneaked across the Dong Ha River and are hiding in these houses on the north side of town. Return fire. But the South Vietnamese Marines are taking no chances. The commander of this unit says he's sure the enemy cannot come across the river and hit his main force here. The enemy artillery has been silent for hours. He fears the enemy is regrouping, may outflank him and attack from the west. The American advisors here, there are about half a dozen, agree. They'd like to conduct a sweep along the river to the northwest. But the South Vietnamese command is reluctant. They want to wait for reinforcements before moving. It should not be a long wait. The reinforcements are moving up Highway 1. They're accompanied by American-flown Cobra gunships brought in from as far south as Saigon. The South Vietnamese Rangers have been trucked from several bases along the central coast. Marine reinforcements have been flown in from Saigon. They land at the military airport at Hue. All airfields further north have been closed. South Vietnamese commanders want as many troops as they can muster. An estimated 10,000 are on the way. The men will be here shortly, but the air power will have to wait for better weather. Whatever the needs, it's their war now. For the South Vietnamese, there's 15 miles of their country in enemy hands, which they'll have to fight for to get back. Jim Laurie, reporting for NBC News, Dong Ha, South Vietnam.
The United States has sent at least 18 more B-52 bombers to Indochina to reinforce the 80 B-52s already there to support the South Vietnamese in these battles, and those planes will soon see action. How soon depends on the weather. It's still bad in the north, and American air power has been limited in the number of sorties and attacks it can make. President Thieu noted that the North Vietnamese had prepared their new offensive for a long time. Less than a week ago, shortly after the drive south of the DMZ started, a Japanese film crew took new pictures of enemy soldiers in training near Hanoi. John Rich has a report on that.
Battlefield reports say that North Vietnamese infantrymen now attacking South Vietnamese strongpoints below the demilitarized zone are well trained and disciplined. This film, taken by a Japanese cameraman just 5 days ago, shows green-clad North Vietnamese regulars training in assault tactics such as were used in the big push south across the so-called neutral zone. Some of the men carried Bangalore torpedoes. Weapons like these were used to cut through the barbed wire defenses around the South Vietnamese fire bases that were overrun. One of North Vietnam's most effective infantry weapons for years has been the B-40 rocket. Fired at close range by a soldier, it can knock out a tank or blast a hole in a bunker. This training took place near the city of Hanoi. The unit, made up of young men recently recruited, may already be on its way south to the battlefront. John Rich, NBC News, reporting.
In Paris today, a spokesman for the Viet Cong delegation to the peace talks said that this new, rapid North Vietnamese advance in South Vietnam proves two things: that Vietnamization is a failure and that the American air power is unable to help the South Vietnamese. In Washington, the Pentagon said it has known about the enemy buildup in the north for some years. Troops weren't attacked there, however, the Defense Department said, because the Nixon administration's policy was not to attack them, but rather to attack anti-aircraft sites and supply dumps. Not much about the current offensive is coming out of the White House itself. Richard Valeriani reports.
The Washington Special Action Group, which usually convenes in times of emergency, met here for the third straight day at President Nixon's direction. But the White House itself continued to maintain a low profile in reacting to the North Vietnamese offensive. Presidential spokesman repeated that Mr. Nixon was watching the situation closely, but any substantive comment was farmed out to the Pentagon and the State Department. While emphasizing there is no lack of concern about the North Vietnamese drive, the White House rejected the use of the word crisis to describe the atmosphere here. As if to stress that point further, the President is going to Philadelphia tomorrow to address a Roman Catholic education conference. The White House said his subject will be education. Earlier in the week, the President was considering going to Fort Campbell, Kentucky tomorrow to welcome an airborne division just back from Vietnam, an occasion that would have required Mr. Nixon to talk about Vietnamization. But with his Vietnam policy currently under severe pressure, the President apparently decided to avoid a potentially embarrassing situation. Richard Valeriani, NBC News at the White House.
Yeah, Rolaids helped, especially when the paperwork piled up and my stomach got icky. Like right before the monthly sales meetings.
Christy?
If the rush and having to eat at my desk gave me heartburn, I took a Rolaids. Rolaids relieve my heartburn, and for me, that's what counts.
If you've dreamed of adding a little color to your life, stop dreaming and start living with a kitchen of passion and Bobby Red appliances. Refrigerator, range, dishwasher, and laundry pair. From Gibson, the medium-sized giant who brings you features the gigantic giants just don't have to. Like Poppy Red appliances. Who else but Gibson? Someone has to be the leader.
The Berrigan conspiracy trial ended today in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. A jury of 9 men and 3 women had tried for a week to reach a verdict. They voted to convict 2 of the defendants on a relatively minor charge. But they were unable to reach a verdict where the major charges were concerned, that the 7 defendants conspired to kidnap presidential aide Henry Kissinger, vandalize draft boards, and blow up the heating systems in government buildings in Washington. All the jury did find was that the Reverend Philip Berrigan and Sister Elizabeth McAllister had smuggled letters out of and into the federal prison at Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. The judge dismissed the jury. Carl Stern has a report.
The defendants lost several battles but won the war as the jury ended a week of deliberations, perhaps a record, unconvinced that a bomb and kidnap plot ever existed. The defendants had already winked and given the thumbs-up sign to newsmen as Foreman Harold Sheets handed the clerk the jury's verdict. Attorneys had learned of at least part of the verdict, apparently from a message the jurors sent to the judge saying they were still deadlocked on the major charge. One by one, the jurors were polled to make sure they concurred in the verdict. Judge R. Dixon Herman then thanked the jurors. He said many people would agree with them and just as many would disagree. There was no cheering, however, from the defendants' supporters and family in the courtroom, due no doubt to the fact that even the minor charges carry penalties up to 40 years in prison for Father Berrigan and 30 years for Sister Elizabeth. Later, at a news conference, however, the defendants said they had won the case.
In many ways we are. We consider what has happened something of a victory because of what we were up against. The rejoicing that is manifest among us at this point is something that does not hide our awareness of the shoddiness that we have seen in this courtroom through the whole process. It does point up the fact that a jury is often more just, even a hung jury, than either the judge or the Justice Department. And that shows us that perhaps the work before us is to put more and more authority into the hands of people. People frequently have a greater sense of decency than those in power. And they have a sense of refusal to buy the government's paranoia, particularly with regard to conspiracy. The decision and non-decision in some respects underlines the initial absurdity of this case. It points to that much more than to judicial leniency or even fairness.
A hearing was set for next month on the defense contention that no one has ever been punished for smuggling mere letters in and out of prison. Prosecutor William Lynch refused to say whether the government would now drop the bomb and kidnap matter. J. Edgar Hoover, who started the whole thing by publicly accusing the Berrigans, may have been the first person outside the courtroom to learn of the verdict. He has kept shifts of FBI agents at the court, although any role they could have had in the trial ended 2 weeks ago. Carl Stern, NBC News.
When you save your money at a savings and loan, your money does more than just grow. It helps your community, help create jobs, and helps a lot of folks you don't know. A savings and loan lends out money for a home so that people have a better place to live. Bet you never thought how much good you could do for all the help you can give. The money you save earns high interest payments. It's safe, nothing ever goes wrong. The money you save helps communities grow, and that keeps America strong. We're doing a lot for America, and we want to do more.
Yesterday's presidential primary in Wisconsin may not have told us who's going to run against Mr. Nixon in the fall, but it did narrow down the field a bit. Here's the final tally. George McGovern, the senator from South Dakota, won the election and 54 convention votes, while Alabama Governor George Wallace squeezed past Senator Hubert Humphrey to come in second. Senator Edmund Muskie finished a disappointing fourth. Senator Henry Jackson came in fifth, and New York's Mayor John Lindsay took a look at his 7% of the vote. and dropped out of the race. Eugene McCarthy and Shirley Chisholm got 1% each. So with 1,509 needed to win, here's how the major candidates stand on delegates as of today. Here now are two reports, one on the next big primary in Pennsylvania and one from Garrick Utley on the Wisconsin primary.
The morning after their victory, McGovern campaign workers were packing up to move on to new primaries. McGovern's win was due largely to his organization, which started work here over a year ago. Then, most McGovern supporters were like these people, young, and the McGovern campaign was based mainly on opposition to the war. But in the last few weeks, George McGovern was able to move his campaign off campus and attract votes of farmers and workers.
I think there is a very broad base to this election victory tonight, and to me, I'm encouraged not only by the numerical win, but the fact that it's composed of groups of all kinds, economic levels from top to middle to bottom, all age groups, ethnic groups, groups of all kinds, and this, I think, is most significant as far as our future campaign hopes are concerned.
The Wisconsin primary was expected to narrow down the large field of Democratic candidates, and it did, starting with John Lindsay.
The returns are clear, and I don't think that we can deny their meaning. And they mean that we cannot honestly continue, and hence I'm withdrawing as a candidate for president.
Two other candidates were not eliminated, but were badly hurt by the Wisconsin results. One was Senator Henry Jackson, who came in 5th, and Senator Edmund Muskie, who came in a distant 4th with 10% of the votes.
Well, I have a brief statement I'd like to make. First of all, losing isn't any better this morning than it was last night. Secondly, that we've decided on a new strategy for the primaries ahead. We've decided to win instead of lose.
I gave you a commitment.
Muskie's poor showing was a boost for Senator Hubert Humphrey. Although he came in 3rd, closely behind George Wallace, Humphrey now occupies the center ground between McGovern on his left and Wallace on his right. And the center is where Humphrey thinks the Democratic nomination can be won.
Exactly what I intend to do.
George Wallace showed again that he has strength in the North. He came in 2nd with 22% of the votes. That's better than even some Wallace people had originally hoped for.
It was an excellent showing. I think it shows that I'm a viable candidate and that I can do well in northern states as well as southern states. And I think maybe the good test of that will probably come in the state of Michigan. So I feel that I am a viable national candidate with a chance to receive the nomination in Miami.
The message from Wisconsin is that 52% of voters in the Democratic primary voted for George McGovern or George Wallace. That is, they voted against the political establishment. And the fact that many Republicans voted with Democrats means that the result here is a warning, not only for the Democratic Party, but for Richard Nixon, too. Garrick Utley, NBC News, Milwaukee.
The political roadshow moves to Pennsylvania now, and last night there was quite an interest here in the Wisconsin results.
The Democrats here, possibly aided by some Republicans, saw to it that Senator George McGovern of South Dakota won.
So George McGovern comes to Pennsylvania a winner, but the game is different here. For a while, McGovern was tempted to write off Pennsylvania on the grounds he could get more for his limited money in the Massachusetts primary on the same day, April 25th. Now, McGovern may upgrade his Pennsylvania effort, but he is still underfinanced here and is depending on a legion of devoted volunteers to do the job for him. Senator Muskie's Pittsburgh office this morning was a place where there was plenty of room for more workers and where there was some worrying over Muskie's poor showing among the Polish voters of Milwaukee. There is a huge Polish and ethnic vote in Pennsylvania, and Muskie needs it as badly as he needs the continued help of Governor Milton Schaaf and the Philadelphia Democratic Organization. Hubert Humphrey opened his presidential campaign in Pennsylvania and is coming back here tonight to concentrate on a state that he can't afford to lose. He'll try to win it with the same combination of labor, party men, and blacks who helped him carry the state against President Nixon. If there is an early favorite here, it's Humphrey.
George Wallace has popular support in Pennsylvania, and he's on the ballot here. But there's not much Wallace can win. He only has 4 delegates running, and this is strictly a delegate primary. It's a different game in Pennsylvania for Wallace and for all the other candidates. The popular vote means nearly nothing. Prestige, maybe, but no delegates and no influence over how the chosen delegates vote when they get to Miami. Pennsylvanians will vote for 137 delegates in a complicated process that involves the supporters of every candidate running against each other all over the state in 50 separate districts. It becomes virtually a do-it-yourself campaign for each pledged delegate. And when all that's over, on the 25th, there will still be 45 delegates unaccounted for. And they'll be picked in an even more complicated process later on. Steve Delaney, NBC News, Pittsburgh.
Terry Sanford, the president of Duke University and the former governor of North Carolina, today formally opened his campaign for the Democratic presidential nomination. He opened a campaign headquarters in Washington and held a news conference. Paul Duke has a report.
Hardly anyone paid any attention when Sanford, a loyal, liberal Southern Democrat, announced his candidacy a month ago. Today, at his headquarters opening, Sanford made it clear he's now a serious candidate, that he'll campaign widely and enter 1 or 2 northern primaries.
I think that we will find that the present candidates that are now in the race are going to have a difficult time getting a clear majority. I think I have as good an opportunity to win the nomination as anybody else that's now in the running. I think that my background and experience puts me in a position to know something about the problems and to have some ideas about solutions for the problems. I think that I could bring into the Democratic Party victory line the states in the South, as well as, I think, maintaining a winning campaign in the Democratic states of the North. I think that I could bring a degree of unity. I think I could upset the Republican Southern strategy. I think I can bring a fresh point of view to Washington government that I think is needed.
Sanford has a good guy reputation and is well liked by national Democratic leaders. His hope is this goodwill could make him a compromise choice if the convention deadlocks. But this candidacy, like so many others, is a very long shot. Paul Duke, NBC News, Washington.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
You ate it, Ralph.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
No, Ralph, I ate it.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
Take 2 Alka-Seltzer.
Alka-Seltzer neutralizes all the acid your stomach has churned out. For your upset stomach and headache, take Alka-Seltzer and feel better fast.
Did you drink your Alka-Seltzer?
The whole thing.
Oh, no, Martha. I'm sure it's fine steak, lovely steak. It's just that, well, I'll just have some of these nice, soft vegetables.
Laura, stop babying yourself because you wear dentures. Change your denture adhesive to Polygrip. Polygrip holds like no other cream or powder. No gaps, no letting go. Stop babying yourself. Change to Polygrip and eat hearty.
At least 7 people were killed and more than 100 were injured in Vancouver, Washington, today when high winds caused the collapse of several buildings. Police said other people were believed to be trapped. The Weather Bureau said that parts of the affected area might have been hit by a tornado, but that could not be confirmed. In Belfast, Northern Ireland, there were 2 bombings in the downtown section today, the first there in almost a week. 2 people were injured in one of the explosions at a workers' social club. The other bombing was at an employment center. The Phase 2 Price Commission today told 4 of the nation's largest petroleum companies that they could increase their prices on an average of 2%, except on gasoline. The Soviet Union said today it has launched a French experimental satellite and a Russian communications satellite into Earth orbit aboard one rocket. It was the first French satellite launched in the Soviet Union. The Senate Finance Committee voted unanimously today to liberalize welfare payments for the aged, the blind, and the disabled. Under the provision, the government would guarantee a cash payment of $130 a month to such people. Adam Clayton Powell is dead, the New York congressman who represented the nation's largest black ghetto for 23 years. He died last night in a Miami hospital. He was 63 years old. Prices rose sharply today in heavy trading on the stock markets. The Dow Jones Industrials went up more than 11 points. On the New York Exchange, an average share gained 38 cents. On the American Exchange, an average share gained 15 cents. Charlie Chaplin is back in the United States after 20 years of self-imposed exile. He is here to receive a series of honors for his films, many of which, of course, are classics of comedy. Chaplin received his first honor last night in New York City at Philharmonic Hall. There were 2,800 people present for what was called a special gala for Chaplin, who will be 83 years old on the 18th of April. On the 16th of April, it was an evening both touching and memorable. Good night for NBC News.
Ventura, Ventura. Ventura. It's an economy car. It's a prestige car. Ventura's an economy car. With prestige. Pontiac Ventura. Right. From Pontiac. Pontiac.
Ventura is the low-priced economy car from Pontiac.
Ventura.
Ventura's a cut above.
Ventura.
Don't you love your grandchildren?
Of course I do. I just don't feel up to having them for the entire weekend.
Is it irregularity?
Mm-hmm. But I'm not taking any harsh laxatives.
Then take Phillips Milk of Magnesia. It's gentle.
Doctors recommend Milk of Magnesia more often than anything else. When you need a laxative, get Phillips Milk of Magnesia, the kind doctors recommend most often.
Did you ever wonder how the other guy became the other guy? Maybe, just maybe, it was his shock absorbers. Maybe they were a little worn. And when he hit that sudden, unexpected bump, kablooey. We don't know how many accidents were caused by worn-out shock absorbers. But even if it was only one, that's one too many for Monroe. When was the last time you had your shock absorbers checked?
If Noah's Ark had had two of everything, including termites, for a free termite inspection, call Terminix, the nationwide pest control experts.
NBC Nightly News has been brought to you by Terminix, the nationwide pest control experts.
See the scene at 6, next on Channel 4, WSM-TV, Nashville, Tennessee.
This represents only some of the wood in your home. Doors, paneling, tables, and what a job it is to take care of. But not with Scott's Liquid Gold. Liquid Gold is a wood care product developed to clean, preserve, and restore the natural beauty of wood. Scratches? Oh, you wouldn't do this to your fine wood paneling. But accidents can happen, and I want to show you something you have to see to believe. And now the sandpaper for some unsightly blemishes. Liquid Gold contains an agent that acts on scratches and blemishes. They seem to disappear. Then, wipe dry. Wax and polish buildup eventually become gummy and smeary. Not only does Scott's Liquid Gold help preserve and restore wood like this, but cleans off old wax, dirt, grease, and water stains. This is your